Hello, namaste, and a very warm welcome to all friends and viewers. Today, we will be discussing a topic that shook the world and sent shivers down our spine. I have a bad sore throat, as you can see, but I could not stop myself. When I heard that we were going to discuss 9/11 with a panel of esteemed women from the Hindu Action team, I just could not stop myself. So I do want to ask and learn more about the thousands of voices that were silenced on that fateful day. I'm Anjali Swami, friends, from Phoenix, Arizona. I am one of the core team members for Hindu Action, and I would request the esteemed panel of women out here to please introduce yourself one by one.
I'm Renu Gupta. I'm right here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm also a core board member of Hindu Action.
Namaste, I'm Paro Sharkar. I'm based out of Houston, Texas, board member of Hindu Action, and also work with a small group called Women Against Radicalism and Rape.
Namaste, everyone. I'll go next. This is Divya Jain from Detroit, Michigan, an executive committee member of Hindu Action and a couple other organizations which are advocating for Hindu rights. Thank you.
Namaste, I'm Rupal Patel and I'm from Central Ohio. I'm a member of Hindu Action as well.
Thank you, everyone. So here is my question. While the audience understands that a person and government's definition of terrorism depends very much on point of view, it seems that since 9/11, the definition of terrorism has become more uniform in both the East and that West. That said, can you define what terrorism is for us? And this question is not to any particular person. Please feel free to answer, whosoever wants to go first.
So terrorism is that force which seeks to suppress the natural freedoms that every human is deserving of by putting a sense of fear into society in times of peace. So even when there is no active conflict or war going on, there is constant disruption of society that keeps people in a state of panic. That's how I see terrorism.
Yeah, I think I can add to my friends. You know, the word terror means to frighten somebody, right? And you can really terrorize anybody or frighten anybody or scare anybody or destroy anybody, not by throwing a bomb. You can really, any act which leads towards that should be a terrorist act, in my opinion. So like right now, after 9/11, nothing is happening like that, that you are, like bombing on my home or World Trade Center. But the different kind of terrorist activities are going on to terrorize certain communities in the society. So I think we should see a different way that what terrorist activity can be and how far they can go.
So I would say that you have answered my question, the next question, which I was going to ask: how has the definition of terrorism evolved? I think you people have answered that question, but who would you say are today's terrorists? Who would we call as today's terrorists?
I would say that anybody who is, as per the definition of its evolution or what terrorism is, that anybody and everybody who is trying to disrupt the peace of the society by being radical, by imposing their own ideologies onto others in form of academia, in form of writing, setting the narratives, intellectually trying to distort the facts and statistics, also who are armed and with and without arms. So that could be an intellectual terrorism, or there could be the terrorism with arms.
That's a very good point that Divya brought up, because what we're seeing, Anjali, is really an evolution of terrorism, from the guerrilla type of attacks to stochastic terrorism, intellectual terrorism, weaponization of speech, even weaponization of artificial intelligence and the information that's being put out. So right now, we as citizens of the world have to be much more vigilant in being able to monitor and call out any of these disruptive elements.
It's important that we recognize these new forms of terrorism because it's not what was 20 years ago. It is amongst us in different ways. So it's important that we recognize these different types of terrorism and do something about it before the next 9/11 happens.
Yeah, very true. And before I ask, how will they attack next? Let me say, I think the attack is already there. What would you say about bills like SB 403, which is based on caste? Right? This is also a kind of weaponization against a certain community. But let's see what you all have to say as to how do you think they would be attacking us next?
Really, 9/11 gave us a new perception that, wait a minute, go back and think what happened with you. And that made me that American Hindus or Bharat land of Bharat has been always under attack, okay, under terror. So I wondered, that guy was looking at me, he said, makes sense. I said, you think about it, and so, but 9/11 has given us, really opened everybody's eyes. But still, it helped the other part more than really hurt them. That's how I look at it. And that needs to be really seen very deeply. But if I can add one more thing before my other friends included, I think we shy away saying who did it. I think Anjali, you asked that. And remember Margaret Thatcher's statement after 9/11? That we know all Muslims are not terrorists. We know that. But how come 99.99% terrorists are Muslims? So what we are shying away is telling exactly who did it, what was the background of that person, and why did it do it. It should not be like a democratic or diplomatic language speaking, in my opinion. So it's called Islamist terrorism, say it. Khalistani terrorism, say it. Or even anybody who is doing it. Okay, so that other side will also look into that. It will help the followers of that faith also to see that what should they do to stop it.
One can be best example of thyself, what they have gone through, and that becomes an exemplary for the world. So I always like to give my own example, that the journey that I have traveled. So in every way, I see it as a lot of subtle terrorism in my mind, on my brain. So how a very dharmic child who is born into a family which is very inclined to high philosophy of Hindu Dharma, and eventually goes to become a liberal in attitude, and which is ready to accept anything and everything under the umbrella of liberalism, then becomes a very secular person. And secularism is good, but perception of danger is equally important at the same time. That is a good definition of secularism. Then I became Christian, and then I became ex-Christian. So over the years, I think that my mind was terrorized, as Renuji rightly pointed out, that I was living in fear of some or other kind, and intellectually I was being played. And as Paroji correctly said, that there is a weaponization of intellectualism, and how it is rightly used to manipulate youth and kids' mind, and then the brainwashing comes in, and how the faiths are trying to impose their ideology on the barren or manipulated minds.
Very true.
I would add that you asked about the SB 403, but we've also seen the dismantling global Hindutva being carried out in universities, and also media spreading misinformation, disinformation, and we need to. That's also kind of an attack on in us Hindus.
And I think a lot of it is due to ignorance. When we are ignorant about our own identities, about our own heritage, and we look at it with suspicion or we are not proud of it, that's when all these things, they take hold of us and they are able to sway us in wrong directions. So let's say our intelligence agencies want to prevent this kind of attacks happening again. What do you think they can do at this point in time?
Well, first and foremost, in order to be able to tackle any problem, you have to be honest about what the problem is. And that's something Renuji touched upon a little time ago. We're not honest about the problem. We're not honest about the causes, and we're not honest about how widespread it is. People are not realizing that terrorism isn't a monolithic activity that happens once in a while. It's aided by various branches within our society. It's aided by people who suppress the voices that speak up against them. It's aided by people like Ilhan Omar in office, who has no qualms about standing up in front of American citizens and saying some people did something and completely devaluing the lives of people that were lost in that terror incident. So we can't just say it's this radical ideology, and only if they had gotten education or only if they had gotten some form of freedom, it wouldn't happen. That is not the case. Terrorism is sophisticated, and terrorism is supported by a network of people, and it spans continents. So we have to be honest to be able to deal with it.
Absolutely. And when you say terrorism has a network, we know that several have stated that terrorism is a non-state form of violence. But we are saying that it is sponsored because, yes, it has a network. Take, for example, the situation with Pakistan. 26/11 happened. We all know who was the originator, who encouraged that. And even for 9/11, I don't think I have to state the facts. We all know about it. There was enough evidence. But I'd like to hear from you, women, that what are your thoughts on this out-of-state, non-state form of terrorism being sponsored by Pakistan?
Well, I think we all have seen, staying in Bharat and really facing every day from Kashmir to all the way, and even before independence and after independence. I mean, constantly all we heard, of course, we heard China also, but again, Pakistan, Pakistan, Pakistan. Okay. And for a long time, we had no idea that our Hindu brothers and sisters living in Pakistan or Bangladesh, what they are facing. I mean, as a teenager, I had no idea because nobody talked about it. Yeah.
And I think Pakistan is the crowning glory in the world of terrorism. I mean, I think that's an unspoken fact, which everybody knows.
Yes,
but
and
also more countries other than Pakistan too, right?
the problem is, I think we as American citizens also need to understand our responsibility in not holding our government accountable on their soft, velvet glove dealings with Pakistan, knowing what they know. I mean, for heaven's sake, the mastermind of 9/11 was not only found protected there. Yes, he was taken out, but the entire country considers him a martyr. Like, that is, if that isn't enough of a warning to put reins on this country. And because of Pakistan, Afghanistan has suffered. Because of Pakistan, East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh, suffered. It suffered one of the worst atrocities documented in history in the 1971 Bangladesh genocide. And again, Pakistan has unleashed variety of terrorist activities, and the mass scale of rape atrocities that were committed during the 1971 genocide, that is terrorism. And you see that form of terrorism now pervading into other sections of Western society in the form of grooming gangs, and we aren't able to do anything about it.
In fact, Osama lived next to their largest military academy for 7 years.
I want to add, so I remember when 9/11 had just happened, and or sorry, when Osama bin Laden was caught, and I used to watch more of the left-wing news channels at the time, and I remember the news anchor saying that yes, Osama bin Laden was living very close to the military base, but in that part of the world, people don't know what's going on. They don't interfere in their neighbors' lives. When I heard that, I was like, that's the complete opposite of what goes on in that part of the world. News spreads like wildfire. If someone knew he was living, people would have to have known. So the media here was trying to cover up and show that it was not intentional, like no one was trying to hide it, which was so incorrect. And that's where I started seeing these things that the left-wing media portrays to the general public here in the US.
So if you could tell me that in the past 2 decades, right, how has the perception of national security and counterterrorism evolved since September 11 attacks? And now that we are talking about Pakistan, what lessons can we draw from this evolution? You brought in the narrative which the left media spins in favor of some of these organizations. But if you what do you think, what are the lessons we can learn, and has there been any change now recently in the left media reports?
I personally don't think so. So I would say that we need to watch news from both sides, not just watch news, not just pick one newspaper or TV channel and just follow that, but watch both sides. Try to find out who's more neutral, where you're getting the real news from. Maybe watch global news, watch news from other countries. So you're getting the right news and you know what you're hearing is not biased. But I don't think it has changed, because periodically I'll see things that I know is misinformation that's running on the TV all day.
So I think data and statistics are our best friend, and 80% of the terrorist attack in the US in the last 22 years have happened with the Pakistani connection. The intelligentsia needs to get more intelligent. I think they need to get their intelligence back, and the good discretion can come with the right mindset. And as Rupal has just pointed out, watch both sides of the news, and the left-wing media is not going anywhere. They're going to exist no matter what. So you have to listen to both sides, use your discretion, use the data and statistics, use the right mindset, and then come to a conclusion. And I think that's I would like to quote an example that my friend stated to me, that the worst thing that they ever watched on TV was 9/11. attacks and the crashing of the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. And they were shocked and really fearful to go from one bedroom to another. So the sense that people have gotten after 9/11 is certainly something big, and the sense of national security. I think last month there was another person. I don't know about their ethnicity or which country they were from, but he was caught in Philadelphia plotting a terrorist attack. So definitely the national security has gone notch up with 9/11, and people have become more aware. But as Renuji rightly said, that we need to call spade out, and we need to where the originators of terrorism are.
So, as someone of color, have you personally experienced discrimination as a result of the 9/11 attacks? And if yes, how has that impacted your perspective of the United States?
Actually, I want to take that. Like I was just going to say, if you remember, right after 9/11, many of our Hindu brothers and sisters and Sikh brothers and sisters were attacked, and some Sikhs were killed in that wake of the identity. They were not sure. So I think that thing we all have faced. But what I used to do it, as soon as somebody would walk in and ask me, I would say, "Hey, I'm Hindu." Because and what I have learned, the minute you say I'm Hindu, then like all the confusion is gone. Then they realize that okay, you're Hindu, so you have nothing to do with that side. That's the one thing I've learned. But see, we live in Ohio. Like me and Rupal live in Ohio, and Ohio is relatively a quieter state. Not our kids grew up, and my kids are a little bit younger than Rupal. Rupal is also went to school here, so she can tell more. We did not face much of those things. People were curious about us, did not know much about us, but that's it. Once in a while, you will feel negative remarks. But I think after 9/11, people have lost the trust. Like they live under fear. They're like all of a sudden, all the security, if you remember flying in the plane, right after 85, and then that bomb, and then this one, my God. I mean, like this has become a headache to travel. So these are the kind of the things we are seeing everywhere. Okay, and I think we have to go through all rest of our life under this kind of scrutiny and security, which I don't mind. But like we have lost the trust. That's the one thing. But I think more important thing is really, I personally believe that, like after 9/11, and I would just want to say my Islamist, faith people, they really, I don't know what they did, but they really got themselves in better position than they were before. And like sort of like they are victim. And I don't get it. I think what happened is people, us, also American people, they have very short memory. That's how I look at it.
So, in the aftermath of 9/11, US, they have initiated a war on terror. We are aware of it. But looking back, what do you think are the most significant consequences? I mean, we can talk about both positive and negative consequences of this military campaign by United States.
So if I may say, the military campaigns have, in my opinion, my humble opinion, have not been successful. They've been successful in a short-term deterrence, but anytime as we've seen in Afghanistan, when we finally had to throw in our boots and leave, we left a vacuum to be filled again by terrorism. So we obviously are not prepared. The consequence, unfortunately, that happened, that has made us weaker, I would say, morally as a country, is we allowed the branding of the term Islamophobia. And under it, while it is valid that there are pockets of extreme discrimination that may be faced by a person of a certain faith, it has been used as a blanket tool by which to silence anybody who is reporting on terrorism, who is alerting authorities, to the extent that there are Islamist organizations that have the audacity to go after the FBI because some people with a certain name that may or may not pertain to the faith are being put on the watch list. You don't get put on a watch list because of your name. You get put on a watch list because of something you're doing. And the fact that we cannot verbalize this openly is such a shame in a country like America.
Yeah, so you are throwing some light on what is the drive of terrorism today. I would like to hear some views from others also.
Even
Um,
like, when people tell us that you are a demon worshipper or you are a, like the stupid things like that. I mean, like, if my 5-year-old grandson has been told about this, he will be scared. He said, Mom, am I doing something wrong? Right? So, I mean, that's the kind of the why we allow those kinds of things to happen or saying. Okay. So I think what we have to do is these kind of terminology or new words. I think we should get into our that this is a like a part of Hindu phobic. I mean, this is like they should be included that that if anybody uses these kind of words against us, so we have to really put on that these are the part of the Hindu phobia. Okay, I think I personally believe in that because I don't know how far we can go to explaining everybody that what our traditions are, what our chants are. A lot of people do respect. I know Hindus are respected very well everywhere, but like a 5-year-old can explain anybody to anybody, right? I don't know. So I think we have to be all these words have to be taken very seriously, so that people are allowed to use it.
I think we need to understand that there's a method behind the madness that we think is some sort of random act of legislation. No, if you look at the current political situation, the elements that I pointed to earlier are going after very specific groups. They're going after Hindus who are outspoken. They're going after Jewish people who are outspoken. And in the world, who are the largest targets for Islamic terrorism? It's been the Hindus and the Jewish people of Israel. So anybody who has a pro-Israel stance is getting branded as a Zionist, and their fears, their apprehensions, and their complaints are disregarded. They are attacked routinely on college campuses. Same is happening with the Hindus, because if you can quiet down the voice of dissent and the voice of the actual victims, you can cover your tracks.
I think this is a very important question, in my opinion, maybe the most important one for the contemporary situation. So, for me, even if I'm on the campus, in the university campus, and somebody is shouting that you are going to hell, an eternal hell, because you do not follow Jesus. So, that is terrorism to me, in a way, because you cannot say that I am going to hell because I don't follow a certain God. And one God is the only way to get me anywhere. So I think it starts from textbook in schools, which are picturing a bad reputation of Hinduism, and giving out the wrong information. That's when the actual intellectual weaponization of terrorism happens on those young mind, and that keeps carrying to on campus certain ideology that are being imposed on these minds, to the media, which is portraying the opposite image of the incidents that had happened in India, and they're trying to portray here as Hindus were the perpetrators of these attacks. And these kind of news you can see like pretty much on an average every week you will see such wrong, misleading news in the newspapers. So I think media is doing a big damage to everybody's mind, and they are to be held responsible for what they're doing and perpetrating in this country. So, Anjali, there is terrorism in every form. The word itself is being used just in certain forms, but if you really think about it from this conversation, where we are leading this to is that it is fearing every mind, and in any form, like in intellectual or like in media. It doesn't have to be just a weaponry or warlike situation, but it could be any other battleground where the terrorism can take any kind of form.
So media has played a role in shaping public perception, policy decisions. What responsibility do journalists have in reporting on sensitive national security issues? How do you think they can change that? Because we have seen a lot of inflammatory articles coming from journalists, that too some journalists from India, if I may take the name of Rana Ayub. What responsibility do you think such journalists should have so that the Hindu community is safe?
I think more than responsibilities, how they can get unbiased is the question. And I don't know, then there is no certain answer to it, that why people are biased even after seeing so many datas out there, so many examples out there, but they still don't want to accept the truth. So I don't know how that bias goes away. I really don't have an answer to it. I keep trying to find this for myself, that how people can actually change for real and for good. And it's the most difficult question.
Think
I would
all it takes is a conscience, and it does not matter what religion you belong to. If you are a good human being and if you have a conscience, that should that should help you, no matter what you are and what walk of life you are associated with. Even if you're a journalist writing articles, if you have a conscience, you should know that your pen can make people lose their lives.
Yeah, I would add that they need to have ethics, work ethics. It's their responsibility that the right news gets to people. So unless and until that's there, I'm sure it's more about getting more views, and whoever's financially supporting them, donating to them, all that plays a role. So it's mostly ethics, and I don't know if ethics is a part of their curriculum in school or not, but that probably needs to be there.
Very true.
And I think
Yeah.
till we find out what government can do and what journalism can do and what all the agencies can do, I have no answer and no control over that, because I think there's a huge money trail going on, and I don't know where it starts and where it stops. But I think as a parent, as an American Hindu woman, which we all are, okay, we are in different walks of the life right now, right? From my grandmother to not married yet, kind of it like long range, or young children. What can we do with our kids? Okay, what can we do our people around us? So I think constantly talking, bringing the issues, doing a webinar like this, going in the ground, going walking to city councils, talk to them. This is our responsibility. Okay, and we teach our kids both. We have to teach them the positive, which we all love to do it. But once in a while, you have to talk about negative also, that what they can face outside. Okay, and which is a very, very important, that because they are a high school kid is going to get, a student is going to get a lot of misinformation from outside, which they will believe more than believing you. Okay, so you really get them to the logic. Okay, so I think as a mother, as a grandmother, as a Hindu action volunteer, I think we should be constantly working on it.
Very true, Renuji. So basically what you're saying that we have to ensure transparency, accountability, whether it is in the field of journalism or even when we are in our relationship with our children, our relationship with our friends, neighbors. It's very important that we, uh, that we show what we actually are, what are the values that we imbibe from our culture. That is what I think, because once they see, what are our values that we draw from Sanatan Dharma, they will understand us much better, and they will not blindly believe what the left media is trying to portray about us. So, in the context of the 9/11 anniversary, how do you think we can strike a balance between remembering the past, honoring the victims and heroes, and promoting a forward-looking, peaceful vision of the future?
I think,
Uh,
like it has become like a sort of kind of a festivity kind of a event kind, okay, like you take candle or you just remember it. But I don't think they remember the people who were killed that time. I can tell you that. I don't think so. Like they may talk very, they may go to mosque and then have a peace vigilance there, or a politician can go there, which is fine, no doubt about that. But how about families who were affected? How? And I think it should be talked. I mean, it should be talked about it. What exactly happened that day? They should show the videos. They should show. The reason is so that we remember how severe it was. I mean, it's something unbelievable, like we can, nobody can imagine. So the kids or people who were kids, babies that time were born afterwards, they have no idea because we never talk about it. So tomorrow, are we going to talk our kids what exactly 9/11 was? I think we should.
Absolutely, I agree. But what do you think is the state of emergency preparedness in the United States today?
Um,
And yeah,
so so let's just take a step back and look at some of the natural calamities that have been happening in the U.S. that have been devastating communities, and I don't think it has inspired a high level of confidence in the American citizens. The recent handling of some of the um, climate emergencies. For example, the fires in Maui, the floodings in different areas. So, and that too, we're actually prepared for that. Our infrastructure actually actively, constantly trains people for that. But we see the conversation around terrorism kind of going all over the place, where they're trying to target parents that are speaking up at PTA meetings because they don't want certain pornographic books being available for their kids, and them being branded as domestic terrorists, or somebody who just is vocal about believing in their Second Amendment rights being branded as a terrorist, or even people who decide that they're going to go to their place of worship without having everybody wear a mask. Then they're termed as terrorists. So the fact that we don't have our act together in really identifying what constitutes terrorism, I would say at this point in time, we're not that well prepared because we can't identify it. And even though the signs are there, we know what spurns terrorism, we're unwilling to accept that.
very true. Does anyone else have any other opinion on what Paroji just said? I do agree with her,
I agree.
100%.
We're not ready. I mean, like, I think we just call everything as an act of terrorist, which is stupidity. Like, you don't wear the mask and you are a terrorist. I mean, like, but way to define, right? I agree with you. Maybe with time will tell. I mean,
Yes,
as a Hindu mother, I just want to be prepared, or as a grandmother actually, to talk the truth with our kids. I think we should make them aware.
I think at this moment, that's all we can do. We can prepare our children, we can let them know, we can give them a sense of pride in their identity. We can teach them ethics, we can teach them values. So, this was a great discussion on an event that taught us so many lessons, but it seems as though we still have ways to go before we can say that our great nation is 100% immune to such dastardly terrorist attacks. And thank you so much, audience, for bearing with me. And thank you so much for a esteemed panel of, very highly intelligent and aware and I don't know. There are so many adjectives that I can use for you, but I don't have enough adjectives in my dictionary. You are just great. You are the kind of women that we need in this day and age. Thank you so much, all of you.
Let's pray
And
for the peace for everybody, for the humankind, as a Hindu, which we do all the time, right? Yeah.
absolutely,
Shanti, Shanti.
Shanti, Shanti, peace. Thank you, everyone.